head looks so big in this. Oh, you can hear me.
Yeah.
I don't know who owns this agenda topic, but you've got the floor.
You're in your kitchen, where's the, Elizabeth, you're in your kitchen, where's your kitchen cabinet? I was trying to break the head of her sense of embarrassment.
I don't think she.
So those of you on Zoom apparently cannot hear us. So hello.
Hi there.
She can hear us.
So sorry.
Over to you.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry, we couldn't hear you there. So if we're ready to go, I'll just jump right in. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Chair, members of the committee. This is Elizabeth Mazzara Myers here right now as your interim government relations director. As you can see, we have the full suite of our government relations team with you today. I'm going to just provide a very short intro to some of the things that are happening, and then we're actually going to turn it over to our colleagues at Vanscoy, Steve and David, to give you a federal update. We do have our Washington County lobbyists here, so if there is a question about any of their portfolios, they're available to answer questions, but really the focus today is going to be a federal update. I just want to make sure you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent, great. So just a reminder that we are still with the chair doing a weekly delegation call with our state legislators. And I would say across the board, and I think my colleagues here will nod their heads in agreement that I think it's been an excellent relationship building tool with our delegation. We've been able to provide good information, I think timely information. And when we don't have the information we need on the call as a team, and then Aaron taking the lead, we've been able to get them that information and follow-up emails. So I think it has been a very worthwhile venture, and I appreciate the chair's time in putting that together. The other thing that you'll be seeing from us soon is a timeline for the 2021 state legislative session. We are just finishing up a legislative concept form, which will be the first time Washington County has actually had a uniform process for moving legislative concepts through the departments up through the deputies to the board for review. So we actually start our process pretty soon here, and you'll be seeing a draft copy of that in the coming week or so, we hope. And I think that's it for the state right now. As you know, May 20th is the revenue forecast, and we expect there to be some kind of session after that. In terms of, let me pause and ask if there's any questions.
Commissioners,
Great.
questions? I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Yes.
Yet again, another great system that you and the new team are putting together for us. So thank you very much for continuing to advance our practices. Really appreciate it.
Well, I think, we've been working on actually the legislative concept form back and forth a lot today, and we hope to finalize it tomorrow, but we're looking forward to having a timeline to you all so we can kind of look ahead to what happened, because before we know it, it will be 2021.
Yeah.
Great,
And if we don't do much in the way of that kind of thinking beforehand, 2021 will be too late to.
That's exactly right.
Things.
That's right. And, I think, I think it might have been Aaron that mentioned this on a call, but, as we're building the relationships with our delegation,
Yes.
Now is really a time to be,
Yep.
Now being summer, the time to bring them concepts, get people on board, get them bought in so that we're not carrying the weight all by ourselves. And I think we're well positioned for that. Great. So moving ahead, unfortunately, this morning there were some technical difficulties, and so I didn't get to hear board communication. So apologies if the chair has already addressed this. We have started our outreach to our fellow delegation. Jajit and myself were staffed calls with the chair and Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici and Senator Ron Wyden last Thursday, I believe. I think both calls were phenomenal. I think, as we all know, we have a delegation that's very supportive of the work that's happening here in Oregon. They're very supportive of state and local government and getting additional funding. So we went in knowing that they were already there. We reemphasized two critical points, which is flexibility in how we spend the dollars if there's another round of funding, as well as being able to use them. Flexibility in terms of timing is what I mean when I say flexibility. So using them beyond the December 31st, 2020 deadline, as well as being able to use them to reimburse lost revenue. So those are the two critical pieces we hit, as well as some other points. But I think those are the two highlights. We're working right now with the departments to follow up on a request from Senator Wyden to provide him some stories from Washington County. So working, I know I saw Paige is already working with her folks via email and phone calls to get some of those stories together. So we'll make sure we get those to Jajit, who'll be sharing them with the federal delegation for us. So all of that said, I'm now going to introduce Steve Palmer and David Haynes from Van Scoik and Associates. I think what you see here today is truly the team that we work with pretty close to every day right now. So while I know that Steve and David are on contract, they do feel like they're an everyday part of our team, and we appreciate their being available to us. And I'm going to go ahead and step back and let them take it from here. Thanks, Steve and David, for being here.
Elizabeth, thank you. This is Steve Palmer, Madam Chair, members of the board. Let me just sort of kick it off and say I'll echo exactly what Elizabeth was saying, is that you know, in the last several weeks and months, really since the new team has gotten on board, we've enjoyed a really great relationship working with them, and it's made us feel like we are more part of the team, I think, than ever. So thank you for that. What I'd like to do is turn it. We're going to break this up into two pieces and really talk about three different things today. One of them is give you a very quick kind of overview of where we've come in Washington as a result of the public health crisis, the bills that have been enacted so far, and then David will do that, and then I'll pick it up and then kind of talk about where we think things are heading from here, and then throw in a little bit more about the infrastructure bill and transportation reauthorization. So with that, let me introduce my colleague, David Haynes, who I think some of you have met, but has not had the pleasure of being in Washington County before.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Elizabeth. I'll just echo their comments that it truly has been great to be part of the Washington County team. And I will also echo that team is the word that best describes it and what it truly feels like. But it's great to be with you today. With all that Congress has done on COVID-19 over the last 2 months, as we've seen in the news and play out, in addition to the supplemental funding that has been coming through those bills. Ultimately, Congress has only directed $150 billion for local governments over the course of the 4 bills that have passed, which I'm going to touch on, both the $150 billion as well as the 4 bills that you've seen passed in Congress over the last 2 months. Starting pretty much, today's the 5th, starting at March 6th, so pretty much exactly 2 months ago, the Congress passed the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act. And that bill, as you may recall, that ultimately focused first on the healthcare funding, provided funding for protection, detection, and treatment. It was around this time when Congress passed the first bill and it was enacted by the president that we realized that information and intelligence on COVID-19, particularly in the federal front, it was changing and flowing very quickly. So we started providing the county with the daily intelligence brief on what was happening on the federal front, both on the congressional front, but also agency to agency in their actions on COVID-19. Next, on the second bill, that was passed 2 weeks later, March 18th, and that provided short and long-term paid leave, payroll taxes, credits for employers, and various, more importantly to the county, various food and nutrition programs, supplemental funding for that as well. Fast forward to the third bill, which we paid closely attention to, which is the CARES Act, or the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. That bill was enacted, as you likely recall, on March 27th, and that bill provided the Paycheck Protection Program, but also the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which the county was part of recipients from the $150 billion in funding for state and local governments. But it was when the third bill passed with the Coronavirus Relief Fund, it was clear, as Elizabeth touched on as well, that additional flexible funding and resources we're going to be needing within that, and I would include lost revenue was certainly needed. So we worked with the government relations team, continue to work with the government relations team, but we started to focus on how we could continue advocacy strategies to make sure Congress was reminded of those needs. And so we were working with the team on different communication sources, such as the letters and telephone calls and emails as well to the delegation and congressional leadership as well. But through these bills as they were passing, different intelligence has been coming out from agencies, as well as we've been trying to provide analysis on guidance and FAQs. And so, and just quickly closing lastly, before I pass it on to Steve, the fourth bill that was passed kind of supplemented what had already been passed, as you likely recall a week and a half ago, Paycheck Protection Program and other sources of supplemental funding. So with that groundwork laid, I'll pass it back to Steve Palmer on what Congress is doing next and what it looks like from the federal front.
Thank you, David, and thanks for that quick summary. I know there's a lot of information to digest there. And let me just reemphasize, we've both said it, but I think, the amount of information that we've been sharing with the county has been, I think, and the information that we've been getting back about how it affects the county has really been tremendously helpful. So we've done a lot of that. And I think looking forward ahead, we're going to continue to do that. For example, just today, there was another set of guidance from the Treasury Department about the CARES Act and the coronavirus relief fund that came out today. We were able to share with the government affairs team. So that work will continue, particularly as we head into the next bill, because Speaker Pelosi in the House of Representatives has already said that her intention is that legislation will be introduced when the House returns sometime probably next week. We thought for sure it was going to be next week, but they kind of hedged on it today. As you know, the Senate came back this week. They're only doing nominations so far. And the House is likely to come back Monday, but we're not 100% sure. Last night, the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, Nita Lowey, sent out a dear colleague letter to her colleagues, because the focus has really been in the House on trying to provide more money for state and local governments. And, the original idea was, the first idea that was proposed was after the CARES Act, there was legislation introduced that would propose $150 billion more for state and local governments, going down to every communities of every size. So it'd be shared widely. Another proposal came up in the Senate that was $500 billion that would have only gone to cities of 50,000 or more. Now Speaker Pelosi is talking about it, has thrown out the number of $1 trillion for state and local governments. It's probably a little excessively high. I wouldn't run to the bank with that yet. But last night, I started to say the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the House, Nita Lowey from New York, sent out a letter basically laying out what the bill will look like in the House. And this is not the final version of what will be enacted, but this is the House's position. That without a dollar amount, she said that the money would be divided up evenly between counties and cities. So counties would be based on totally on population throughout the country. Cities would get money of 70% would go through the Community Development Block Grant Program, 70% to those cities of 50,000 or more, and 30% would be to smaller communities below 50,000 of population. So they're trying to map out in the House a formula for dividing up that money. As I said, they don't have a total amount yet of what that will be, but we do anticipate that will start to move very quickly, as possibly as early as next week. Now in the Senate, Majority Leader McConnell has been all over the place. First, he said no money for state and locals. He doesn't want to, as the president said, bail out bad governing by blue states, let them declare bankruptcy, as you heard. And then he's come around to say, yes, I think it's wise to have some money, but it should be tied to tort reform. And as recently as today, he said, well, let's just put a pause on right now. I'm willing to consider anything, but let's put a pause on it. My members in the Senate are not yet eager to pass another $1 trillion bill. So it's going to play itself out over the next several weeks, I think, what the next legislation will look like. Okay, quickly on infrastructure and surface transportation reauthorization. There's a huge appetite among the congressional Democrats, the House Democrats, to do an infrastructure bill. As you recall, they introduced a $560 billion bill earlier this year, or proposal, which is a combination of another number of different bills that are out there. And President Trump's talked about $2 trillion. Again, Senator McConnell has thrown cold water on both of those and really is not inclined, he said he's not inclined to do infrastructure as a part of the CARES Act as of now. And as we've seen, as I just said, he's changed his mind on state and local funding several times. So to be determined what that will really look like, whether or not infrastructure will make it into what would ultimately probably be the bill after this next one. I don't think it's going to happen in the next bill, the CARES 2.0 or 4.0, depending what you want to call it. But I do think that the House Democrats will continue to push for more money in infrastructure. If it doesn't happen, surface transportation reauthorization will come to the forefront. Most people are still pushing for a 5-year bill, but because of the delayed and the congressional delay timing and the congressional schedule, it's possible that we're looking at a 2-year extension of current law. You know, in that $560 billion bill that the House Democrats introduced or proposed is included are the funding levels for highways, transit, and passenger rail. So they have at least laid out that broad framework. But I'm hesitant to say that a surface transportation bill will get a multi-year bill will get done this year because the Congress is likely, based on the schedule before the coronavirus hit, the House and Senate are expected to be in session the rest of May, all of June, and then break for the Democratic convention at the end of July, not be in session for August, be partially in session for September because of the Jewish holidays, and be gone all of October. So that doesn't leave a lot of time to do significant legislation beyond what's needed to address the coronavirus. So crystal ball is a little murky for today, but at least that's what we're trying to give you a quick idea of where things stand and where we believe things are heading. And with that, I'll turn it back to Elizabeth and try to answer any questions you all may have.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, David. I don't think I have anything to add to that. We do have those FAQs, and we got them while you guys were in work session this morning. So Steve Rose, you'll be getting those shortly. I'll say that I've done a quick review, and I think there's no surprises in terms of changing how we understand the COVID Relief Fund, again, which was created in the CARES Act. So at this point, I'll just open it up to questions from the board, and the whole team is here available to answer, whether it's Van Scoyoc or your Washington County lobbyists.
So we can see you in nice video. You unfortunately get the whole view.
You're very small.
Of the table, so you don't get to see us as clearly. So sorry for that. Commissioner Rogers is participating away from this room. So why don't I see if Commissioner Rogers has any questions or comments for you first. You're on mute, Commissioner.
There you go.
I'm okay. No, there's nothing that I had heard that I haven't heard before other than, Steve, it's always good to hear your perspective. The infrastructure bills obviously are very important to us. And one of the interesting things in that Southwest corridor is if there is something more we can ask. I know TriMet is inclined to do that. But thanks for the information. We did get some money, as you all know, $104 million. I'm curious if this next package has a carve out for cities, which there sounds like they might. How would we trickle down any money from the allocation that we got? And I know cities are asking that if they're going to get their own allocations. So that would be.
Commissioner, it's a great question. Let me just say that there's no guarantee yet that in the next bill there will be additional funding for cities, but the good news is National League of Cities, Conference of Mayors, and the National Association of Counties, and I believe the governors are finally working together. They're not. There was a period of time about 2 weeks ago they were all at each other's throats trying to get money, just as you've experienced locally. But I do think there's a realization that everybody needs money. The frontline first responders are happening at the counties, are happening at the cities, irrespective of the population size. And I'll just say in this, and Elizabeth can elaborate if she wants, but the guidance today that came out of the Treasury Department of the current funding that you receive says that you may allocate funding to the cities, but you're not held to.
I have a follow-up question, if I may. Just, we have a number of pretty important and large special districts, and that's not entirely unique to Washington County. I know that's a practice in other parts of the state, and I know in California. Where may they fit into this funding fight?
So I'll say that in the FAQs, they made clear, the FAQs released today, that cities, special districts, and school districts all may receive funds from larger jurisdictions. So in terms of those dollars, we're not prohibited from providing those from the CRF dollars. In terms of what's next, I'll punt that back over to Steve.
And honestly, thank you. Thanks for that one. Honestly, I haven't heard that there's any special consideration for them, although I have to say every group in Washington that has representation of Washington seems to be lining up for the next bill.
Jesus.
And I'll just add that Treasury has heavily emphasized that if there is any pass-through funding, the county or whatever pass-through entity that is ultimately accountable for how that money is spent. So that's just something important to keep in mind moving forward as well.
So, Mr. Rhodes, should we expect that commissioners would be provided with that information as well?
Yes.
Great. Any other questions or comments from board members? I want to thank the team for arranging the phone calls with Congresswoman Bonamici and Senator Wyden last week. We did make the ask for additional flexibility from federal programs, specifically asking that they would lower the threshold required for local match. And then specific to Southwest Corridor, asking them for further flexibility on the amount that could be allowed for that corridor, given that our local match would be funded not just here in the county and the cities, but also at the state level, and the state has a tremendous loss of revenue with the income tax collections effect. So we provided those asks to our delegation through those calls last week. It is a little disheartening to hear how some of the discussions go, but they are going to go. And I thank you for not only working to put our needs forward to the delegation, but to also help us be informed as to how the mood is, how the process may or may not be working, and to assure us that you're working as hard as you can on as many fronts as you can moving ahead. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us today?
Chair Harrington, if I may, I just want to compliment you all for setting up this call this way. I have to say, Commissioner Rogers has asked that we do this for years. And so I'll give him credit for doing this. I, however, wish I was in Hillsborough, just to be able to do it in person. But thank you for the opportunity to do it over Zoom.
Well, I'd say from our end, it's a great experience. We have you all here on screen so we can see all of your faces. Unfortunately, the way we are set up here in the big room, I'm not sure that you get to see all of our faces. But I think we were all listening attentively as you were taking us through the detail. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know. It looks like Jajit's got colored glasses on. He's kind of like Joe Cool on this thing. So is that what's going on there?
Continuing the banter between Commissioner Willie and Jagjit in our work sessions.
Yes. No comment.
Wise man. So.
Well, I guess I just want to say thank you to everyone. Again, I think it's been great working with this team, and we appreciate the board's opportunity, giving us the opportunity to give you the update.
Oh, Commissioner Treese has something for you.
I just want to make one comment here. Thank you for the update. It's unsettling to me to think about what our role is in relationship to the dollars that come in and to the cities, and I know we'll work through that, but I just wanted to register that. The other thing I'd like to do is just give a shout out to Aaron Doyle for her work on the emergency small business loan, and just her guidance has been really, really helpful for all of us. So I just want to say thank you in this venue.
Great. Keep up the work. Good work, everyone, and stay healthy. We do look forward to seeing you face to face occasionally. Thank you. Is there anything else for today's work session? Seeing none, we'll adjourn.
Good.
Bye.
Bye.